There are far worse things awaiting men than death.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from the place. We got decks around here somewhere. At the end of the last video, I asked you what you wanted to see, and you responded with a resounding blue-black Eldrazi. Budget blue-black Eldrazi specifically. Haven't done a budget deck in a few days now, so it's probably time for that. I know you guys love the budget stuff. So here's blue-black Eldrazi. We've got 8 1-drops in the deck, 4 copies of Sludge Crawler, and 4 copies of Salvage Drone over here. Both 1-drops that do cool stuff for you. You know, later on in the game, cool little mana sink over here on Sludge Crawler. You know, you can make him a 3/3 a little bit later in the game. That's not bad at all. A little earlier in the game, you can make him a 2/2. Not bad either. You know, being able to pump him up to trade or even just outright, you know, kill other blockers is not bad. And later in the game, he'll go unblocked a lot of the time. You can just pump him up to a 2 or 3/3, and that's, you know, mana well spent. Over here, Salvage Drone, not bad. So, a pseudo replacement effect, sort of card selection effect whenever he dies, which is pretty good too. You know, smooths out early game draws, will trade with some creatures in the format, and when it gets through for ingest, it gets through for ingest. It's not bad at all. On to the 2-drops. 4 copies of Fathom Feeder, one of the most important cards in the entire deck. This is a very impressive Eldrazi. Good on defense, fine on offense, and really good when you equip a Ghostfire Blade to it, you know. Not in any way bad. It becomes a real threat, you know, in a lot of ways, and it's not a bad threat to begin with. And later on in the game, that ability is very, very important. Being able to draw cards for you, great in stalemates, great later in the game to sort of refill your hand. Around the 5th turn is when you're going to be wanting to do that anyway. So just everything Fathom Feeder does is amazing, and it makes it a centerpiece for the deck. Right now it's at about $1.90, $2 on TCG Player, so it's some of the big money in the deck. There's really only 2 cards that cost us any real money in the entire deck. This is one of them, but integral to the deck's construction, even at the budget level. So, gotta play it. Fathom Feeder is awesome. 4 copies of Mist Intruder. I'm a little more impressed, although not all the way impressed, but more impressed than I thought I would be with this card. Especially, again, with Ghostfire Blade attached. You got a 3/4 flyer right there. And the ingest isn't bad. I'm going to pause here for, you know, a minute and a half, maybe. I'm going to try to time it. Let's talk about ingest for just a second. Now, all 4 of these early creatures, and another creature later on in the game a little bit, you know, next spot on the curve, they all have ingest, but we're never going to win off of milling them through ingest. It just doesn't really happen. Never had it happen for me once during testing. But ingest is still very good. It denies them resources, you know. Against a lot of control decks that we would typically be bad against, a lot of them only play 1 and 2 ofs of key cards like Languish and, you know, removal elements and stuff like that. And finishers. That's very important too. 4 copies of Wasteland Strangler. This is fantastic with our first 4 drops I've just talked about there. All of them ingest. Wasteland Strangler follows them up really, really well, especially if you can Mist Intruder 2nd turn, 3rd turn get through for some flying ingest damage, and then Wasteland Strangler and kill their 2-drop. You know, that's a really, really good turn sequence. And Wasteland Strangler will take out pretty much every, you know, significant threat in the first few turns of a game here. Even if we had no other removal elements, this is great. Removes one of their guys, puts a 3-power threat on the board, all in the 3rd turn. That's very good. 4 copies of Ruination Guide or Anthem Effect, with ingest, which often gets overlooked. But you won't be swinging with this guy all the time. You want to keep your Anthem out. But very, very important for the deck, you know. Works well with Ghostfire Blade. We're able to give like one guy +3/+2. You know, that's not bad. Makes Mist Intruder like a 4/4 if you've got a Ghostfire Blade on him and a Ruination Guide out. And all of our other dudes get, you know, just that extra +1/+0 means the world. We're playing a lot of really small creatures, you know. Just like everything about Ruination Guide, I think it's worth playing 8 3-drops to play. Both 3-drops do something when they hit the board, you know. Smaller guys get bigger with Ruination Guide. All our guys get bigger except for him. And then Wasteland Strangler, you know, killing a guy is just, that's great when he hits the board. Great tempo play, so I'm willing to play 8 3-drops is all I'm saying. Ruination Guide is very good. 3 copies of Smothering Abomination. I was playing 4 in the deck, but I cut one for a spell. You know, great finisher for our aggro deck, and don't have to worry too much about sacrificing creatures. Playing a lot of creatures on the low end of the curve, you know. This is sort of good synergy if we're able to sacrifice Salvage Drone. We're able to draw a bunch of cards. Sure, we have to discard one, but on the turn we're able to draw like 3 cards because of that. That's not bad at all. So Smothering Abomination has been really good in helping sort of refill our hands, you know, and it helps, by the way, fulfill its own condition. You know, you're able to draw into more creatures, play them, sacrifice them, draw them. And I know that's not great sounding, but being able to get the card selection or card advantage really is really, really good. 2 copies of Blight Herder at the very top of our curve. The card is still very, very cheap. Hear me out, by the way. Just a quarter for this card. A lot of aggro decks will play a couple of 5-drops, you know, dragons usually at the top end of the curve. We're able to play a couple of Blight Herders, and this actually helps us out in a couple of ways. You know, spreads out the power a lot. At 7 power, we'll definitely be able to drop a card or two into their graveyard and get those guys, you know, not hard at all if we've done our job in the early game. And one more thing, if they do get off mass removal against us, this is a really good way to follow up, you know. Guaranteed if they're playing mass removal, we've probably got a few ingest against them because they don't have too many early game blockers. So we're able to easily play the Blight Herder right after they play their Languish or their, you know, their 5-drop, you know, mass removal spell. And this follows up like super, super well. So Blight Herder has been really good for me in testing. And again, Ghostfire Blade, it makes these tokens just 3/3s. That's not bad at all. And it makes him like a 6/7. So yes, I've played Blight Herder to really, really good results so far. 4 copies of Ghostfire Blade, which I've mentioned a bunch of times. The other money in the deck, you know, costs about $1.75 on TCG Player for a copy of this card. That's about $7 for a playset. Not bad. So between, you know, $2 for Fathom Feeder, $1.75 for this, both play sets are at about $15. We got $5 to play with, which is plenty to fill out this deck. You know, Raceland Strangler is still very cheap. Smothering Abomination is still surprisingly cheap. So, and the rest of the cards are all, you know, commons and uncommons that cost 5 and 10 cents. So, very, very easy to make this deck for just $20. These are the 2 money cards, though, but you gotta have them. Got to have Fathom Feeder to make this very good at all. And you've got to have Ghostfire Blade to really make this work in any way. So Ghostfire Blade, super important. Maybe you've still got them from last, you know, if you made In Soul. You've still got these. So I'm glad you kept them. They're still good. Finishing off with our last 3 cards, because they're all one-ofs, you know. We've got 2 cards with Delve, 1 copy of Murderous Cut, and 1 copy of Treasure Cruise. And then we've got a counterspell, 1 copy of Disdainful Stroke, which does a couple of things for us. Not only is this counter Siege Rhino, which we are very, very big on, you know. Really don't want the Rhino to even hit the board, because we're doing very, very small amounts of incremental damage. And Rhino can really hurt us, you know. So keep it off the board, and counters everything from Languish on up in the mass removal department, which we're really scared of too. And then these 2 cards with Delve, I just don't want to have too many cards with Delve, but Treasure Cruise refills our hand, and then the sort of mid-game, this Murderous Cut can be very, very good. You know, just, again, kill their Siege Rhino if it's already hit the board, and just keep smashing on through, you know. And I could see making it 2 cuts, no cruise, but I really like the ability to just straight up refill our hand in the mid-game. Here's the sideboard right here. We got a lot of different things to deal with different things, you know. Negate and Disdainful Stroke also against mass removal and stuff like that. And Negate's not terrible against some of the aggro decks that are packing, you know, Become Immense and Atarka's Command and Temur Battle Rage. And just the rest on down, you know, pretty easy to figure out. I feel like this is a fairly standard sideboard right here. You could switch out the Tainted Remedy for something else, but this is pretty much what I want to do. And here are our power rankings. A final score of 57, not bad at all for $20. You know, that's fairly competitive. And the deck doesn't look incredibly competitive, but once you start shuffling it up, it's not bad at all. And Jest is a much better ability than it looks like. Ghostfire Blade can make your things really big, you know. The deck is more impressive than it looks at first glance, and is a little more versatile than it appears too, although it's only going to ever do the one thing. It can build a lot of different stuff. The deck has been a lot of fun in testing. Really good aggro deck, curves out, and does more than your average aggro deck does, which can be really fun. And not only are you doing damage, you're also getting rid of just ripping vital threats off the top of their library. And when you hit good stuff, it feels really good, and they hate it. They absolutely, when you rip a Languish off, or you rip their Ajutai off the top of their library forever, it's just, it is anguish for them, man. It is not a good feeling. There are upgrades that could be made to the deck. Hangerback Walker is something that I'd really like to see in this deck, you know, gets all the colorless bonuses you could ever want, and is a good creature all the way through the entire mana curve. You could add red to this deck, actually, and that'll, you'd have to change the whole land base out, which would make the deck very expensive just to put the Grixis land base in. But you'd have access to Barrage Tyrant, which, you know, Eldrazi decks really, really want. Barrage Tyrant would be a great replacement for Blight Herder at the top of the curve. You get to run the excellent Forerunner of Slaughter, maybe Duststalker if you're into that. Herald of Kozilek could go in there, although I like the 2/3 drops that we're playing. So you could add red to the deck, or another thing I thought about doing was adding Stratus Dancer to this deck against mass removal like Languish. You know, we can play it on curve and flip it up against cards like Languish and 5-mana mass removal and stuff like that. And while it's flipped down and is a morph creature, it gets all the bonuses for being colorless. You can equip it with a Ghostfire Blade. You can, you know, it gets a bonus from Ruination Guide. So Stratus Dancer could go pretty well on the deck. And that's pretty much all I could think of, though. Well, that's all I got for today. Let me know what you want to see next time. I can either do the Lucky Charms, I finally got that together. It's clicking. I really, really like that deck. It's basically a 5-color control deck that makes heavy use of, you know, commands and charms in this format. That deck is really, really fun and really cool. Or we could do the $20 budget mono blue deck, which I'm probably going to push back a couple of techs because this is a budget deck. Or, you know, I could do the black-white control deck, which is coming along very, very nicely. Just let me know what you want to see next time, and I'll cook it up for you. I am Dev from SBMTG. If you enjoyed the content, do us all a favor. Like, share, comment, subscribe. We're almost at 10,000. I want to get there really, really bad, so help me out with that, you guys. I'll see you guys next time. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thank you for watching, the Wizards.